Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you very much for taking the time to come along to the Botanic seminar here at Mitel today. My name is Lisa Dolphin. I do the devil's work, so I'm in the marketing department. So over the next little while, I guess half an hour, 35 minutes, I thought I would do a number of things really and talk about a best path to the cloud. But instead of doing a holistic Mitel view of what we consider to be the best path to the cloud, obviously I will get there right at the end, but I thought I'd share some views before we get there as to what's happening with cloud, some of the things that you should think about if you're not on a cloud journey yet, or you don't know whether you should be on a cloud journey yet. If you are on that cloud journey, some of the things to think about as you move through it. And perhaps I've got a couple of things in here as well that I often hear customers tell me that there is happening to them while they're on that journey, or they're thinking about it, or they don't really know where they are. I'll take questions at any time, so hopefully if you've got anything at all, please shout out and ask. Anybody who's got a differing view to mine as well, please, happy to talk about that. But before I start, can I just check, is everybody in the room a user of Mitel technology of one kind already? Anybody not? Oh, a couple of people. Okay, well, good. So hopefully we can take you on the journey with us then. So lots and lots of people talk about cloud. If I was stood here a year ago, I probably would have started off with a little graph that showed what kind of countries were deploying cloud and why they were doing it. But actually today things are very, very different. And there's an awful lot of people spending an awful lot of money on cloud services. At the back end of last year, about $120 billion was spent on people providing IT services through a cloud deployment. Now that of course is a global number, so you might think, well actually that's probably not very much as a huge global number. Huge portion of that, probably 60-ish% was spent in the US. The remaining 40% was probably spent throughout Europe, although the biggest growing area of deployment of cloud at this time is in Europe, rapidly being joined by some parts of Asia, which is pretty much where most of us would expect. What I think is interesting is that there's going to be quite a huge growth rate over the next 2 to 3 years. Most of that being driven by something that I've been talking about for the last 10 years. All of you would have been hearing for about the last 10 years. Simple, growth in unified communications. But really specifically, growth in things that are associated with productivity and associated with collaboration. So most of that is actually fueling some of the huge deployments in other areas of technology that we've talked about for a long time. Upturning economy. And I think there's a kind of interesting, we're seeing some good things happen to the economy, which is fueling our ability to take some IT spend. Most of that spend now is not for saying, oh, I need to buy technology for technology's reason sense. It's about saying I need to buy technology because my business has a number of key things that it has to do. And most of you will have many different challenges, but I think a couple of very simple ones are focused on most people want their organisations to be agile. Sadly, we all need to react much quicker to things. We all need to be in a position where we can anticipate change, and if we can't anticipate change, at least not get run over when it happens to us. Most of us still are quite focused on people, so attracting the best people, and when we've attracted them, keeping hold of them. You know, I've watched some interesting things happen in the market recently about lots of graduate employees no longer choosing Apple as their employer of choice, which was a huge thing that young people have always done. Now they're moving to a lot more of the kind of application software houses. So lots and lots of struggle with big corporates who traditionally could attract people, can't keep them, so that's important for us. And I think most of us want to be quite competitive, whether we're in private sector and we need to attract customers, give a really good customer experience, or you're in the public sector and you're really there to serve citizens. I guess today we have to be quite competitive, and if we're not agile and we haven't got the best people, then we can't be competitive. But that leaves many organisations, and perhaps some of you in the room today, with I guess a bit of a challenge, because while I'm seeing an upturn here, what I feel still is that lots of our infrastructure within our organisations has suffered over maybe the last 10 years with some lack of investment, and perhaps that will have been in infrastructure, networking, security. And there's good reasons for that, I think, because mostly these things are strategic decisions. Somebody is responsible for them, there is a budget assigned for them, there is a whole process to go through in terms of getting that budget and spending that money. So they can actually be long-term projects that we have to manage and we have to kind of subscribe revenue to. But on the other side, our organisation is going at a very different rate. So businesses are reliant today on business intelligence and analytics. Many people may be looking at doing flexible working programs, perhaps. Lots and lots of talk about customer interaction, providing the digital experience to all of your customers. And of course, a lot of that traditionally would have relied on what's happened over here. So if this hasn't had investment, then all of those things that your businesses are asking for today can't happen. Interesting thing happened in the marketing department just over a year ago now, and I tell this story because it was quite humorous at the time. Myself and my colleagues wanted to buy some new market automation tools. So we went over here to the mothership and said, please can we have? And they went, oh no. The infrastructure won't support that, the network won't support that, and you didn't come and ask last year for it to be in the budget. So, okay, we walked away and moaned a little bit, stamped our feet, went off into our little marketing corner and went, haha, of course we can have it, because we don't need to worry about this. If we buy that application as a cloud delivered service, this doesn't have to be upgraded, and we can pay for it, because we can pay for it as a monthly user subscription fee, and this part of the organisation doesn't have to worry about doing all of that. That can happen at its own pace, but of course we can still be satisfied. What I see in the real world, when I talk to a lot of people like yourselves, is they come along and say, you know what, Lisa, to get these people and be that, we've got to do this flexible working thing. But we can't afford to buy a unified comms upgrade, because we've got to do some infrastructure work and we've got to do some legacy replacement. And I have the same conversation with them. Sure you can. Sure you can. Do it at that speed, not at this speed. So that's been an interesting little thing that I've watched go on with cloud over the last kind of year to 18 months. And it's been all about decoupling those two things if people want to move forward. So in order to do that, I think it's important that what you leave here with today, and that you think about the next session when Jonathan comes back and talks to you, is that if you find yourself in a scenario where you've got some infrastructure, you want to do some new things, or actually even if you know you just want to do new things, give yourself a choice. And there are a couple of choices. So you could go forward with anything that you want to do in your organisations around communications with a legacy deployment. Still available today, will still be available for a long time. Or you could decide that you want to do cloud, or you could decide I don't know and I want to do both. So there's the first thing that I'll leave you with. Consider that you should put yourselves in a position where if you don't know what to do and you need to make an investment, consider whether you can do one or the other, or both, and neither has a long-term impact on you making that decision. Because what you may find in the future is actually your decision that you make up here regarding cloud at some point in the future may be affected by some other kind of framework. So that could be, I've just randomly listed a couple there. So it could be that everything in your business runs on Microsoft. Everything in the Mitel business is solely focused on Salesforce, however will soon be focused on sugar. We're about to make that change. Of course, it would have been a disaster here for us if we'd made a decision that only allowed us to do that. So if your business needs to focus solely on any of these areas or a different framework, don't let that be a roadblock factor for you. Remembering, of course, that whether you do anything at all with your communications infrastructure, I guess my second takeaway would be, remember that down at the bottom layer, all of the people that work in your businesses have got a device. Now that could be a desktop device, it could be a soft phone, it could be a mobile phone, it could be a tablet of some kind, and they're the only things that they're interested in. So you should always start at the bottom and work up, and not at the top and work down. So think about the people in your business. Whatever you do up here, don't make them have to be the point that changes. So I'm a good example. I only ever use my smartphone and my tablet as my communications device. I use what I choose to use, not what Mitel gives me to use, because that's my choice. I use the device which is best for me to do my work. It would be unacceptable for Mitel to now say, oh, it's great, Lisa, that you want to do that, but we're going to inflict another infrastructure on you that changes the way you work. And I would say no, because that would be unproductive. So whenever you go forward now with cloud, start at the bottom and work up. It will help you make that decision an awful lot easier. And what I see kind of happening as a trend is that smaller organisations, and I have generalised a little bit here, so apologies for putting anybody in the category that they don't truly fit in. A small organisation, maybe up to about 25 or 30 people, has a large interest in public cloud. And the reason for that is lots of shared services, they don't have to manage it themselves, they don't have to worry about the resource factor, probably buy it as a consumer application. The larger you get, you're probably more interested in private cloud and coming the other way, because you've probably got an organisation and resources that can manage that. And somewhere in the middle will be the people who have a choice and may fall either side of that camp. So here's a couple of reasons why you may buy cloud communications and other people buy cloud communications. And the first thing I hear is, our strategy is to move everything to the cloud. So why might you do that? Shared services, resources, tends to be a financial kind of model. We need access to technology now, my scenario. I want it now, I need it now, we've got an urgent business need now. Could be all of the legacy infrastructure has to be replaced. Could be that you just need to deploy one or two things. Think about the flexible working policies, the teleworker policies, collaboration needs of the people working within your organisation. They're the kind of people that need technology now, and it allows you to think about the budget and the return on investment for that. Cloud-based solution works best for our businesses. Today I hear that from organisations that might be distributed. Could be distributed within a local community, could be distributed across a global footprint. But quite often people think it's best when they're in that type of environment. Allows for rapid expansion, also shrinkage and movement. So anybody who has an organisation who perhaps does, it's a good example. I've done some work with a legal company recently who tend to open and close offices in different parts of the world by way of testing the market, understanding whether they will enter fully. Not a good use of resources, both in terms of people and finance, to put physical equipment in those places. Easiest thing for them to do, open with cloud, withdraw. Open with cloud, move things around, move their software and move their licensing around. Cloud offers a lower total cost of ownership. So I would urge you, think through that model very, very carefully. The absolute best way to do that, and I know you'll say, oh, she's bound to say that, but it is really the truth. The best way to understand where your total cost of ownership comes in a cloud deployment is to sit down with people like Jonathan and talk it through and map that out properly. The worst thing that could possibly happen is we all think, oh, there's lots of savings, there's a monthly fee per person, and you don't plan properly what people want to have. So make sure you work that through with people who have specialist knowledge in that area. And the last thing I hear is it supports our growth plans. So anyone who's growing, of course, the one thing that cloud deployments do allow you to do is to start with a number of people and add to them. You're no longer thinking of buying hardware, software, licensing. You're just thinking of talking to your cloud provider about, please can I have 5 more users who look like A, B or C, and they're up and running. In reverse, if you reduce, you can also say, actually next month I'm dropping a few, but I'll move them and enhance them again in a couple of months' time. So most people will fit into one of these 5 areas. I think there's not much that sits outside of here. So always good things to think about whether you meet them all or you think you might meet them all. Second, I guess, third piece of advice I would give you is not to think it's any different than the last time you made a large investment. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was working with people who were changing fixed telephone systems, there was a huge tendering process we went through. Does it supply all of these features? Why am I doing it? And I always urge people to do the same again. So to stop and ask yourself, why are you moving to a new deployment now? Why do you think you need to? Is it that you, really simple, you need to move from capital expenditure to an OPEX model? Is it that you've got some real pain and you've got to save money? It could be those simple financial things. Or is it that actually you've got some real business problems that you have to manage? So just think through what they are, and then think through what solution elements you're going to want. So, are you going to want managed services? Are you going to want a leasing model? Will you want mobile working? Will you want unified communications? Are you going to want networking? And the box will tell you where your justification factors are, and you pick that model up and you talk to somebody like Jonathan and his team, and they will work all of that modelling for you, because when you've done this piece, it's much easier to work out where, out of the 5 things on the previous slide, you will always sit. But there's always some gotchas, and it would be remiss of me kind of not to identify them. Most people will take advantage of cloud because they think shared services is a good idea. Most people will think there's access to expertise, and improved security, and good business continuity, better connectivity, and good flexible capacity. So these are always the things that we run forward thinking we're going to achieve. But the gotchas are, be certain that the model you're going to go forward with will support everything that you need in your business. If you've got people like myself that travel all of the time, so I need everything working on the device that I've got in my hand, am I on your list of people that you've considered? Or do you only think about people who sit at a desk? So, do all the features that your business need for all of the people get supported through that cloud? If the answer is yes, are you certain that the supplier providing it is always going to keep that up to date? So is whoever you buy from going to come to somebody like a Mitel and say, have I got software assurance? Is good support for that software included? Ask those questions, because if it isn't, in 6 months' time when you want to expand new users and you say, oh hey, but they now need to do a whole different feature set, don't allow that supplier to say, I'm sorry, but we don't have software assurance, we can't provide you with that. How does it support your growth? So can you move that model up and down and up and down based on what happens in your business? Can you do that? It is a fact of life that our businesses morph, up and down, sometimes in a manner that we don't understand and we can't predict. So if somebody comes to says to you, next week I've got 200 more people or 200 less people, you don't want to pay for what you haven't got. So make sure that you can do that. And what's your time period for that total cost of ownership? You know, if you all wrote off your last purchase over 7 years, just remember that you might do a cloud model that could be 3 to 5. So think about that, huge important factor. What about security and compliance? So is that cloud instance, if it's not in your business, going to be in a tier 3 data center? Is it secure? Is there excellent connectivity? And you know, the answer is there's always going to be excellent connectivity at the data center end. Huge amounts of it, this much of it at the data center end. You've got to think about your end. You know, I fell foul of a very silly conversation myself. I went to see some people that were based in North Wales, and we were having this wonderful conversation about all this great stuff about connectivity, and they waited patiently until I'd finished, and then said, oh, that was all great, Lisa, but we're in North Wales and we don't have that. So, you know, just remember, lots and lots of people will talk about the excellent cloud connectivity, always at the one end. Make sure you understand what's going on at your end. You know, and if you've got the right connectivity, just because they can provide it, do you provide it? So you've got some choices as to what type of business you buy cloud from. You could go online, a bit like buying broadband. I want a bit of this, a bit of that. You're only going to get low-level services, low-level provider. Who knows whether you'll ever see them? You know, unless you've got, well, less than 2 people in your business, I would not advise that. But, you know, that is an option. You could indeed do that today. You could go to a specialist provider who does some specialist application, shrink wrap type of stuff. You know, might be a reasonable option. But in my view, and it is my personal view, I would hasten to add, you know, sits below the line of what would be required for businesses of most of your kinds today. You've got a third option, and again, you know, I'm always conscious of the, well, you would say that. But the reason why you wouldn't go to either of these 2 people, in my eyes, is quite straightforward. You would always select somebody who has a history of understanding how to deploy communications, but more importantly than anything at all, you would go to a provider who will not let you fall foul of those gotchas, because actually that is the most important thing. You know, how are they providing it? How are they securing it? How have you got connectivity to it? How do they help you work with your organisation to understand what your people need, so you don't fall foul of, my cost model says it's £10 a month per person, but actually now it's £20 a month per person. Identify all of that right up front and understand how they can move you from what you've got to where you want to be, or manage that hybrid model. So you have choice, you know, without a doubt you have choice. Be above the line. Be above the line, because that's where the absolute value is. For those of you who are a Mitel house, and even for those of you who aren't, I just wanted to show you really what we've done and why it's important for the relationship that we have with Britannic. Because if you're not with us today, I would like to give you some comfort about where we might go in the future with our software. And for those of you who know us well, hopefully you've already got some of that comfort. Many years ago, in fact, not long after I started work at Mitel, telephone systems came in great big boxes like this, and they stood much taller than me. And I spent many months ripping all my hands as I pulled backplane cabling and jumped at them, and they had cards in them that looked a little bit like this. And they had some software that ran on them, and we put lots of hardware inside, and down here was lots of processing, and we connected analog telephones to them, and if you were really lucky, we connected some digital phones to them, and they took up rooms as big as this to supply about 200 or 300 users. It was absolutely phenomenal at the time. a couple of years later, I guess, as technology moved on, that big box morphed into to a smaller box, sat underneath the desk. Thing was though, still had lots of hardware in it. Good thing was, it was the hardware that came out of the big box, now went in the small box. The software was the same, so I've kept the same brown little circle there. Obviously that software had morphed and changed as we'd gone along the road for a couple of years, but it was kind of still the same. So those customers could get rid of big rooms like this, put these boxes in small rooms, their investment was still protected. Cards came with them, software came with them, the very expensive desktop came with them. And all we did was connect them by some fibre. So the great thing was, these went to the four corners of an organisation. And then the great thing happened. So we joined the onset of IP telephony, voice over IP, and the little box in the middle went to an even little box, 2U server type thing. Great thing about that, hardware in these remained, software remained the same. So these people who were still using analog and digital phones never had a different user experience. Still the same for them. They might have changed their phone, but it was still the same for them. Software came across, no new training, no need to update people, bit less space in the data centre. And then of course we allowed people to have IP phones. So all we did then was put some licensing on here. So those people were working in a hybrid mode if they wanted to, analog, old digital, and brand new IP, and nothing had changed. Even these people, they might have had a new phone on their desk now, but their user experience was still the same. And then over time, well, lots of analog has gone, still big need for that today, but lots of it en masse has gone, lots of digital gone. Most of these devices today have become all IP, so they're just licensed now. And then a couple of years ago, we started to talk cloud, although we didn't talk about it as cloud. We talked about it in terms of the virtualization world. And we put the software into VMware, and more recently, the last couple of years, into Microsoft Hyper-V. But the really important thing from an investment perspective is that software remained the same, the licensing remains the same, the handsets remain the same, so the user experience has remained the same. The choice has always been yours, and lots of people now, this is obviously the model that comes to front of mind when people think about a new deployment. But now, all we do is we pick that up, we pick that software up, and we put it in the cloud. So all the hardware can go or remain, the choice is yours. The licenses move up into the cloud, but the user experience remains the same. The only addition to all of that is, of course, around here now, the surround sound piece, is I can emulate this device on my smartphone, on my tablet, I've got it on my laptop, I've got it on my PC at home, but I've got the same user experience. So if you're on the Mitel journey, you'll probably recognise yourself on here somewhere. Wherever you started, you can move along, or you can remain there, or you can go up there. For those of you who are not on the Mitel journey, I guess it's been about 30 years that all of that has morphed and changed, and the hardware's come and gone, and the software has remained the same, and the licensing's added. I guess as we move forward into the more mobile arena, and some of you might think about mobile cloud, which is kind of where Mitel will go now and go next, it's still the same. So whether this is cloud because it's on a server and it's software in a data center, or it's mobile cloud, all of that software will remain the same. Because it's absolutely our mission that we never force people to change the experience that happens here, unless you really want to, and then you're down to device choice. So we've got the fastest growing cloud business amongst anyone globally. Almost 2 million seats of cloud installed now, huge growth there. You know, if I were to say where has that growth been, I would probably split that between 60% of it is in North America and the US. The remainder of that is in the UK. So, you know, huge growth of cloud in the UK. Massive amount of cloud seats being added every single quarter, which I think gives a view of where our customers are taking our business rather than where, you know, we set off to take our business. Nobody's got better subscribers for total and public seats than Mitel, of which we're very proud of, because, you know, that shows a degree of where our customers want our business to go. So I'll leave you at that point because I think I'm just in time, which is quite unusual for me. And if during the break or at lunchtime, you know, you kind of want to talk through what the cloud model might look like, I'm happy to do that. If anybody wants to talk about things that I've seen go really well, and some things that I've seen not go well, then, you know, I'm happy to share those experiences as well. You know, and we can do that at break time. Has anybody got any kind of immediate obvious questions that I can take now? Or we can do that in a little while? No? Good. Okay, good.
Thank you.
So I'll give you the